journalist, but he hit the news with a controversial expose of his local GAA club. He says he thought long and hard about writing the book, but when tragedy struck both him and his team, he had to tell his story. Will you please welcome Christy O'Connor? Now, Christy, I say you're a sports journalist. You're, of course, much more than that. You played in goal with your club team for 20 years, and you know, I know you're a bit of a legend yourself in Clare, and then of course your brother is Clare legend James O'Connor as well. So you know your credentials on this are you are of the GAA and it is of you and all that kind of thing. So the book is a fascinating book about the year in the life of your club. I suppose one thing that struck me about it was not being someone who ever played GAA and not being someone from rural Ireland. I know that there were a lot of guys that year, you were kind of coming to the ends of your careers and everything. There's a lot of like, those were the best years of our lives and we'll never have times like that again. Is that really how it is? Like, are those years when you play for your club the best years of your life? Is it downhill from there?
Well, I don't know if it's downhill from there, Brendan, but definitely, and I suppose we were lucky enough to win an All-Ireland and county titles, Munster club titles, and you know, great days. And I suppose it's that sense of brotherhood and friendship, and I suppose that's really for me what it ultimately is about, is the comfort of friendship. You know, I often think back, I suppose, you know, very basic thing like, you know, in the dressing room before a big match, you know, maybe you're racked with nerves or very tense, a lot of tension, and you look around and you see your brother, your best friends, you know, the guys you grew up with, and you know, that's always for me. It's kind of like the ultimate comfort blanket that you ask, or you say to yourself, well, where else in the world at this moment in time would you rather be? You know, just there with your, it's just a unique kind of a feeling, and you know, obviously you love spending time with your family, and you know, that's brilliant. But I just think in that sense,
but the locker room is more important.
Well, no, not that, but it's just a unique kind of a feeling that maybe a sensation or a buzz that, you know, you might struggle to recreate in other forms of life. It's just that unique sense of brotherhood, I suppose, really.
But no, you're pretty savage to each other in the dressing room as well. Then, on the other hand, like, I mean, some of the scenes and stuff you say to each other, it's kind of Joe Pesci kind of stuff. Yeah.
I don't know, we're that bad, but yeah, it's just, I suppose, look at some people might have been a bit shocked by the language of the book and the language maybe used, and I suppose the rawness and the tension. But you know, I just decided when I was going to write the book, Brendan, that I wasn't going to hold anything back. I was going to be as honest as I could, and you know, I think you can get that sense that you know, that emotion just comes at you, and it's there because, you know, I suppose it's a fly on the wall type of documentary type book, and I was the fly, and I was right there, and I suppose maybe that I had the access that, you know, I was just lucky to have and to just, you know, to just bring that out and try and get it across what it means to us, because that's ultimately what it is about. It's how important and how much this means to us. And you know, it's like every you know, we're no different to any other club in any other sport, hurling, football, soccer, rugby. It's that universal appeal or that universal passion that is there, and that, you know, everybody can relate to, especially, you know, club players, because I suppose it is that bit more parochial, and you know, you maybe get that sense that it means that bit more.
But the devotion to the club is extraordinary, like, isn't it? To the point where I know, for example, your girlfriend moved out at one stage, didn't she? Because you chose the club over her.
She did, yeah. And like my wife now, Olivia, you know, 6 months before we got engaged, you know, her cousin was getting married in Mayo, and I promised her all summer I'd go to the wedding, and unfortunately, like classic GA situation, the match was rescheduled at short notice, and I think the straw that broke the camel's back was that I wasn't actually playing in the match. I was the minor coach. So we were playing Clarecastle, our arch rival, so it was either the match or the wedding, and there's probably girlfriends and wives all over the country booing the TV now, but I chose the match. So there was a little bit of a difference of opinion, and she decided to, you know, leave for a week. So we patched it up and we got married.
And to get her back, did you have to say this is never going to happen again, whereas you probably knew something like that was going to happen again?
Well, I think Olivia, she knows me well enough by now that she knew it was not that something that extreme was going to happen again, but you know, I suppose she knew what she was signing up for.
Okay, fair enough. Come here. The women are still wanting to mince. There is another side to it as well. Like the way you put it in the book is that the club is a magnet for resentment and arguments. Like the politics is ferocious, and basically it seems that like all the kind of stuff that goes on in any rural parish, it seems to all kind of go on through the club in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's like anything, Brendan. I suppose in work, in society, there's always going to be tensions and politics. Like no club is unstained by politics, and I suppose the depth of passion probably, it's a melting pot, and I suppose that depth of passion brings it out. And I suppose there's one story in the book where, myself and Ken, the full-back, who's somebody I've huge regard for, we've had a great relationship over the years, and there was an incident in, a game we lost, and I made a decision in the game which he didn't agree with. He let me know about it. I wasn't too happy about it. And, the two of us nearly went to blows in the showers after the game. But, it just... But it was just, really... I felt, well, I'm not going to let this go. And, I think he said after as well, that we were the two guys who were probably hurting the most that night. And that...
stop, come on. Just...
But, that's I suppose, that's the rawness and that's the emotion that was there.
And then you would have been very close again very quickly afterwards.
Yeah, well, that's it. We was out in the open. And but that day we lost that match, like the tension and the... just the kind of, I suppose, emotion in the dressing room, was so intense, and that it was almost like it was like a powder keg waiting to kick off. And I suppose that was maybe the spark, and we got over it, and you move on, and that's the beauty of it. You just you just get on with things.
But I suppose a lot of that stuff, right? What happens in the dressing room stays in the dressing room, and even what happens at meetings in the club and everything stays in the meeting. So you kind of broke the code of omerta then. You wrote the book. I know you've got a certain amount of stick for doing it. You didn't change anyone's name. You told everything warts and all. Why did you decide to do that?
Well, I definitely would have been advised, Brendan, by, my brother Jamesy, Shawnee McMahon, one of my great friends, not to do it. They said, well, do you really need this hassle? You're exposing, maybe stuff that people in the parish mightn't want to go on. And, there's a story... there's a journalist who wrote a book in American football. He followed a college team in Odessa in Texas, and he was told after the book came out that if he ever went back he'd be shot. So I was kind of wondering, well, there's going to be people around Durbierfield going around with a shotgun looking for me.
And you're going to...
And I was living here
in that parish.
Exactly. So that was something that I had to get in my head straight away, that I said, I'm not going to hold anything back. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to lay it all on the line. I just feel myself, a lot of journalism, a lot of sports journalism, that they're not really telling the whole story, and I just wanted to get that across. And as well as that, Brendan, the fact that 96% of the players in this country, GA players, are club players, and they don't really have a voice. It's all about the inter-county game. So I just felt it was my chance to give them a voice. But And
I know it was also, to a certain extent, it was about your buddy Ger Hoey, who died very young. And there's that quote in the book, before he dies, you say at one point about the guys in the club, these are the guys who are going to carry your coffin. And you did all end up carrying Ger's coffin. And it is an extraordinary kind of depiction of how the club comes in on that occasion and gets everyone through it and everything.
Exactly.
But Ger's death was part of your reason for writing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose just that's one thing, Jamesy, is you go back about the passion and the camaraderie and the brotherhood that's there, but you all go to one another's weddings, celebrations, but as Jamesy said once in a dressing room, that reality is we're going to carry each other's coffin, and unfortunately we had to do that. And I suppose with Ger, and I suppose with the book, and maybe some people having an issue with the book, which I respect everybody's opinion, but I suppose I felt that the book was written for the right reasons. It was written primarily to pay tribute to two people, and one of those was Ger. And just to talk about Ger, he was to put into context for your viewers, like we say, the Clare team of the 90s was spearheaded by James O'Connor, Shawnee McMahon, Ollie Baker, three unbelievable hurlers. And we were lucky enough to have those on our team, but the spiritual leader of that Durbierfield team that won the All-Ireland was Ger Hoey. He was an unbelievable character, a huge leader, a brilliant friend to all of us. A young man at 40 years of age just was out for a run, collapsed on the side of the road and died. And really, I suppose, the void that Ger left, I suppose, reflected the type of character he was. And I suppose the book really, our season was ultimately trying to honour Ger and his memory. And, I suppose, sometimes you wonder, people talk about perspective and they say, well, how will hurling ever mean as much again? But, I suppose, an All-Ireland, the glory of an All-Ireland will never last. But I suppose the community's glory is an honest and robust life, and Gerard's life was a great life. So
Yeah.
the best way to commemorate passion is passion itself. So
And
that's what it was about.
And you said 2 people.
Yeah.
And then there was a tragedy that was even kind of closer to home for you. That was your little girl,
Yeah,
Roisin.
my baby daughter Roisin, she passed away 5 days before Ger. The last time I actually met Ger was in Drumcliff Cemetery, just after we buried Roisin. So
Yeah. Roisin only lived for 5 minutes.
she just lived for 5 minutes. You know, we found out, obviously we knew from the first scan that she wasn't going to survive. So, you know, obviously
Really,
very
Jesus.
difficult. Yeah,
So
but
you kind of carry that around.
yeah, but we didn't tell anybody, Brendan, because we didn't want to mourn her before she passed away, and we
Yeah.
wanted to celebrate her life while she was alive. We knew she wasn't going to survive for long. We didn't know if it was going to be 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days. So, and you know, it was probably, you know, like Olivia was more aware of her probably than she would have been of any other child, because every kick was, you know, maybe the last one, or you know,
Jesus, yeah.
and you know, look at, that's it. Like, you just, unfortunately.
Christy, then you had to go around, like, presumably everyone is like congratulating her, touching her belly the way people do. And
Yeah.
is it a boy or girl? And you went through all that and told nobody.
Yeah, I suppose that was the toughest, Brendan, really.
Yeah.
You know, people come up and they try and engage with you, and you try and be friendly and you try and be polite, but they ask you, you know, well, is it a boy or a girl, or have you names picked out? And you just try and pass it off. But the reality of it is, you know, there are other priorities: purchasing a grave plot, a little white coffin, you know,
Jesus.
and that's just the reality of life. It's like, you know, you try and maybe deal with these things as best as you can, but you know, you can't deny what's coming, and you know that the trauma of death is going to hit you, and you can't prepare for that. You try and prepare for it as best you can, and I said in the book, like, all along, I tried to prepare, I suppose, with the mentality of a hurler. Like, maybe that sounds vulgar, but that was all I knew. You know, you steel your mind for what's coming at you, and you try and deal with that. But then it's the reality and the trauma of death, and nothing can prepare you for that. Like, would say, the baby died. Olivia got to hold her for 2 minutes, 2 precious minutes. She died in the midwife's arms, and you know, very hard for you to watch your child die in front of you. But
Jesus.
that's reality, and that's life, and you have to deal with it. You just have to get on with stuff.
And like, you kind of did go, you went back to hurling straight away, kind of after she died, to deal with it, didn't you? Like,
yeah, well, I suppose, look at Brendan, hurling is my life. I absolutely love hurling. It's my passion. I'm lucky enough that it's my job. You know, and I suppose really, you know, you just do. It's the routine. You know, as I said about Jared, you know, you just passion. You best way to commemorate passion is passion itself. So, you know, the first place I went to after we buried Roisin, well, obviously I didn't leave the house for a few days, but I went to the pitch in Durberfield, you know, myself and my young son Thomas, hurling a ball, and just poked away, and it's just a routine, and you kind of need that to try and get back into normality.
It helps you make sense of.
Yeah, like, and you know, your friendship and the brotherhood of, you know, your club players, and you know, the likes of great players, Owen Conroy, Shawnee McMahon, Donald Cahill, all those guys, Ken Kennedy, Darragh Driscoll, you know, they're your support network, and maybe sometimes you're not even aware of it, but
and you're not all sharing your feelings about it,
we're not.
But they just quietly come around and
yeah, and I suppose, look, at men don't really show their emotions, and maybe the book in some sense was probably a cathartic experience for me, that I just wanted to, you know, I didn't want to create trouble writing the book. I just wanted to be honest and to be real, and I suppose it was something that I couldn't have written in 4 or 5 years' time, because it was my one shot to do it. And you know, I think the Hoy family, you know, I think they were delighted. Once I got Siobhan, Ger's wife, she gave me her backing straight away, and then I just said, well, look, let's just go for it and see how it gets on, and you know, happy with how it's worked out.
Yeah. Listen, Christy, it's an absolutely, it's a great book, like, and I know, I'm not a huge GA fan, but when I mentioned you were coming on, all my friends read it. A lot of people say it's the best sports book they've ever read. As a person not interested in sport, I thought it was an absolutely superb book. And
thank you very much.
And you know, your own story in there as well. You know, it's sad, but it's heartwarming in the end. So the book is called The Club, and it's out now, and it won Sports Book of the Year, I think, last year. Ladies and gentlemen, Christy O'Connor.